A very good morning and a hearty welcome to all of you to the CXO plus GC Leadership Summit presented to you by the management consultants to the global legal industry. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Legal League Consulting. Well, can I have a good warm round of applause for your own presence? Thank you very much. Well, this is a platform for general counsels and CXOs such as you from different and varied industry sectors to talk about the challenges faced by Indian companies and also the MNCs and understand their metamorphosis as business leaders, protecting businesses, creating value, and also contributing to the growth. Well, for the inaugural session, may I please have the proud privilege to invite on stage our respected guest of honor, Mr. Jyoti Sagar, Chairman and Founder, J. Sagar Associates and Managing Partner, KNS Partners. May I also invite our distinguished guest, Mr. P.K. Malhotra, former Secretary from Ministry of Law and Justice. And may I also invite our international expert who's there with us, Mr. Kamrati, Special Advisor India from Blake's, and he's also the Vice Chairman of Canada-India Business Council. And may I also have the pleasure of inviting the founder and CEO of Legal League Consulting, Ms. Bitika Anand.
Welcome to the CXO plus GC Leadership Summit and Excellence Awards 2018. We are truly honored to have so many distinguished participants, speakers, and delegates gracing the summit today. At the outset, let me convey my heartfelt thanks to all of you who have taken out time to be part of the summit. With several intriguing sessions planned for today, I'm looking forward to see the day unfold and witness the interchange of knowledge. As India gears up towards globalization of the legal profession, the fraternity is noticing some very interesting trends. Law firms are exploring options of synergies, resulting in mergers and acquisitions in order to augment bandwidth and expand to newer practice areas, clients, and regions. Founders are increasingly moving towards more professional setup, appointing of managing partners, CEOs, CIOs, CFOs, COOs. The sector that was once dominated by legacies and generations of lawyers is now inclusionary in its approach and is open to provide platform to several first-generation lawyers. Companies are increasingly deploying technology to enhance their efficiency and productivity by automation of routine jobs. In a sector that is constantly undergoing metamorphosis, the role Legal League Consulting as a flag bearer of innovation assumes more importance. Legal League Consulting was founded as one of its kind niche organization that would commit itself exclusively to the legal fraternity and advancement of legal profession within India and internationally. So let's commence the program of the day. Thank you.
Well, yes, let me introduce you to the topic of the inaugural session, which accentuates on banking on the World Bank Index. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all know that India's ranking on World Bank Ease of Doing Business survey for 2018 has climbed a record of 30 notches to 100, that's 100, as a range of the regulatory and policy reforms put in place by the union and the state government there. Well, let's welcome our chief guest of the day, Dr. Lalit Bhasin.
It's indeed a privilege for me to be here. The legal profession in India is now willing to accept the foreign challenge because we feel that we are now competent enough, good enough to face this challenge because the Indian legal profession is second to none. The two indicators holding ease of doing business in India, holding India ease of business back, are the enforcement of contracts, where India is 164th, and registration property, where India is 154th out of 190 countries. India's data diversity is a big draw for global AI implementation. AI can be a game changer in government where scale and quality need to be addressed simultaneously. What does India need to do to enhance technology, create new jobs, and meet the requirement of the change scenario? Firstly, we must realign India's education system to emphasize skills rather than mere degrees. We must move away from the Anglo-Saxon system of education with emphasis on academic degrees towards hands-on learning in practical subjects. Secondly, we must constantly upgrade skills. There is a severe shortage of skilled manpower. India needs massive upgradation programs in the new technologies. Thirdly, we must create a highly flexible, resilient, and adaptive workforce which is multi-skilled and has the capacity to undertake digital tasks from anywhere rather than a fixed location. Fourthly and lastly, we must initiate measures to ensure that Indians are fully prepared to embrace the new era of artificial intelligence, blockchain, additive manufacturing, and emerging technologies. India cannot afford to bypass this revolution. This requires a new mindset. Our policies must drive this change. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And our next speaker, ladies and gentlemen, is our distinguished guest. Let's welcome on the dais Mr. P.K. Malhotra.
But the topic which is slated for today's discussion in this particular session is with regard to our World Bank ranking in the ease of doing business. That has to be looked into. But due credit to the reforms which have taken place, only thing what we have to see is whether the benefit of those reforms have gone to the people on the ground and really whether the things on the ground have changed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malhotra, for your realistic perspectives and your enthusiastic participation in the inaugural session there. It's time for us to welcome on the dais Mr. Kamrati. With your applauses, please.
We, our members control 75% of the business between Canada and India. And we were asked to organize the Prime Minister's business events in Bombay and Delhi.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time now for me to introduce to you all to our guest of honor, who is the chairman and founder at J. Sagar Associates. Well, he founded J. Sagar Associates as a solo law practice in New Delhi. Join me in welcoming on the dais Mr. Jyoti Sagar.
All right. Getting on to the subject of the day, I actually wanted to also talk a little bit about the construct of this entire doing business index, and are we too much hung up about it? And I think Malhotra ji covered a lot of that. He covered the very interesting aspect, which is never publicized, that actually Delhi and Bombay, just two cities that they come and survey on those 10 parameters. They used to be, earlier they used to have on labor, but for some political reasons that's been knocked off. There are actually 11 that they surveyed, but they came out with only 10 factors or topics, as they call them. But the other problem with that is that 75% or more of our economy, and I would call it India un-Inc. It is not India Inc. It is India un-Inc. This is the unorganized sector. This is the small and medium enterprises and micro enterprises. They never factor into this. And you know what? They constitute about 75% of our economy. Bar and bench, I think, between them can do a lot. We don't have to rely on the government. We don't have to rely on extra courts. We literally don't have to rely on extra judges. What we got to do is improve our efficiency. Slogans will not make it happen, but we can make it happen. Thank you.
Well, this was the much sought-after kickstart that we gave to the CXO and GC Leadership Summit.
If you can innovate in challenging times, you will be successful.
Miss Shehnaz Hussain, the legend entrepreneur. This session would delve into some of the very recent initiatives and measures to promote India as the center point for global investment.
We are going to cover, I think the potential of India has been often discussed, and I think it's well established that the potential is there, and That's why it's still a topic of discussion in many boardrooms of companies about either entering into India or doing well in India. And it's not an option, it's something that all companies aspire to do. And I had the good fortune of doing that for Microsoft way back in '98 and then now with Amazon as well. And so it's always an exciting place to do business in. It has its own challenges, as we have heard, but I think those challenges too can be converted into opportunities. It's how you look at them.
I think two key important things is to why do we need FDI and why would FDI or any foreign investment come to India is what we need to understand. I think we are speaking about one of the fastest growing economy in the world here, and if you want to keep growing at that fast speed the way we want to grow further, we need to have capital in the country. And today with the banks, Indian banks being stretched and we lack institutional financing in the country, there is truly a dearth of a quality capital to be brought into India to finance our startup entrepreneurs, to finance our, our existing businesses and other projects.
There is no doubt that a lot of progress and change in the legal framework has happened in the last few months and the last year or so. GST was one such example. It started many years ago. There was a lot of consultations between the state government, central government. Whether we like it or not, or however imperfect that law may have been, we did have a law which did attempt to replace a number of indirect taxes in the country.
Historically, with all the legislation, it again wasn't lack of legislation. We tried many things. We tried Sarfazi, we've tried DRTs, we've tried a number of frameworks. We've got Companies Act, which has got winding down provisions. All of that helped in resolution of maybe 10.6% of recovery. And it took about average of 4.5 years. Now, when you compare all of this to developed economies, the recovery rates are around 80%, 85%. It takes about a year to year and a half. So the promise that the government has brought in after studying all of this, and this problem has become quite immense, is that, no pun intended, there was a need for resolution of a broken system. So therefore, they brought the whole insolvency and bankruptcy code, which I think is designed beautifully. It's got the features, it's got it's fast-tracked, it's a single legislation, it's got early detection mechanism, it's cash flow-based versus balance sheet-based, which is the US system. So I like the fact that in India it ought to be cash flow-based because insolvencies are more determined based on when you can't pay your debt, as opposed to looking at your balance sheet and saying whether or not your asset side is bigger than your liability side. The one thing that it has done, which is different from US, is it's creditor in possession versus debtor in possession. Now, what that means is that as soon as you go out and actually put yourself out for resolution, the creditors come in possession of your company, as opposed to in the US where it has always been a debtor in possession. I'm not sure which one of these two are right. I think it's got to be a hybrid. And these are the bottlenecks that one has to see. So if you talk about creditor in possession versus debtor in possession, you would see that the creditors are not equipped to handle businesses. Insolvency professionals are certainly not equipped. They're just passing an exam and they have no clue what to do with a business, which was run by promoters for years and years and years. So the question is, when you throw them into the game, you're likely not to get a resolution. You're likely to go into liquidation. And liquidation is, again, a huge leakage.
The sense that we really get from this discussion is that this is the era of transition, and new regulations will have a transition challenge. And that's what we are seeing with most of these policies and legislations. Overall, I think there is good momentum, and I think there is good opportunity. Speaking purely from an Amazon perspective, it's about innovating. And if you can innovate in challenging times, you will be successful.
Considering the theme that I saw on the brochure, which is convergence of business and law. And I think it's a very important thing. It's easier said than done, but you have to ask yourself the question as to what does this really mean? And having had feedback from clients over the years and friends, etc., I think in a nutshell, what we've been told by clients, by in-house counsel, and others that we've dealt with, is that it's basically trying to find business solutions to legal problems, not legal problems to what people want to do. Now again, this is easier said than done. Obviously, we know we live in a complex world. Regulations have basically, grown manifold. Laws have grown manifold, etc.
Miss Shehnaz Hussain, the legend entrepreneur.
In life, it's not important what you want. What really matters is how badly you want it. You can achieve anything in life. Just want it that much. Never give up.
I want double the applauses for this session, Chair.
Thank you. With that, I think, let me just walk us through what we have as a topic. And what we are looking at here is the ability of experts to not only define a disputes landscape, but has the disputes landscape itself defined a need for expertise. And it's in that context that I would first call upon Montek and ask him, do you think you have the most difficult job in the world because you have to tell people that you really need me and everyone believes that they can do the job better than you can?
Well, thank you. In short, I think the answer is an emerging answer. In India, it's been harder just because people like us haven't been used before in disputes in a large scale. Just by way of background, when they talk about experts, what they really mean are witnesses who opine on certain issues in a dispute, whether that's industry specific or an issue which is obviously very prominent these days is valuation disputes or breach of contract results in damages. So how do you quantify those damages is something, a question which I answer often.
Particularly since we are discussing here in the realm of the commercial disputes, namely, let us take arbitrations for instance. If we do go in for a claim, we need to prove that particular claim that we have. And sometimes you have complex issues, something like construction contracts, for example, that you mentioned here. The issues that we are facing in litigation or in arbitrations for that matter is not just having lawyers who are expert in those particular subjects to present those particular cases, but also in respect of the judges and the arbitrators who understand those particular subjects, have some degree of knowledge and expertise.
I would really want to talk about what you could do pre-contract or pre-relationship as such. How do we sort of strengthen that? There are quite a few red flags that you could just miss out if you don't undertake this diligence, right? We have done so many cases where during the dispute scenario where we said, why did they even sign this contract, right? It was at the face of it something that was going to go under, right? So I would really stress upon undertaking a thorough diligence, which will not only help you in understanding the party that you're getting into contract with, but also ring fencing your interests from a legal standpoint and otherwise. And of course, giving more stress to ongoing monitoring, especially when you don't have access to the day-to-day operations of the partner that you have.
These are the three things which we look at basically as an in-house counsel as to how the cost is going to be, in any of the matter. What is the consequences which we are going to have, and finally, the competency level, the execution of the, how the award would be made where the execution is there. So there are three aspects which normally look into that.
So in terms of arbitration, I'm sure all of us are aware that many things are happening in last 2 years. And that's something, it's very encouraging for all of us to kind of take the leap into bringing India at par with all other jurisdictions who are so-called arbitration-friendly jurisdiction. The best part is that the courts in India are turning towards pro-arbitration approach, and the recent decisions of Supreme Court and number of high courts have shown us that we have a long way to go, but it's not very far.
So I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being a very patient audience.
Thank you very much, panel. Some critical perspectives there and some critical time coming up. Ladies and gentlemen, hold your breath. The award for the legend entrepreneur goes to none other than the power woman, Miss Shehnaz Hussain, the legend entrepreneur. She's the CEO of a brand that needs no introduction, absolutely. Yes, the very famous Shehnaz Herbals that we all know. Well, with over 400 franchise clinics in 138 countries. Oh my God, this is humongous. Her work and vision has reached almost every household in India. The Managing Director of Leadership Matters, Mr. Tarun Anand. And I'm going to announce his name, Miss Farhana Vora. rocking until we meet next. Thank you.
In life, it's not important what you want. What really matters is how badly you want it. You can achieve anything in life, must want it that much. Never give up. Feeling requires a lot of time. Just go on and let the world celebrate.
Our laws are always enacted after the horses bolt. It is very important for us to change the way our legislation is done per se, and the world over, not only in India. There were a few very eminent speakers who talked about, said some things were wrong in India. Yes, they are wrong, but the world over the same problem is there. And we need to fix that. The way legislation is itself done, it needs to be more proactive because things are changing very, very rapidly.
The one thing that I'll constantly say is dream. Dream big. Make your canvas larger. And just by believing in yourself and by working extremely hard.